Joseph's brothers didn't snap. They knew the price before they named it. That single fact dismantles the version of this story most people carry. The betrayal of Joseph is almost always presented as a moment, a breaking point, a flash of jealousy that crossed a line. Brothers who went too far, men who would regret what they did in the heat of the moment. That framing is comfortable and it is wrong. What happened in the valley of Dothan was not a crime of passion. It was a transaction. Planned, priced, and executed with the cold precision of men who understood exactly what they were doing and chose to do it anyway. To understand how calculated this was, you have to understand the world those men were standing in. The region of Dothan, where Joseph found his brothers tending flocks, sat directly on one of the most traveled commercial arteries in the ancient Near East. The road running through Dothan connected the highlands of Canaan to the coastal plain and fed south toward Egypt. It was not a remote or obscure location. It was a highway. Merchants used it regularly. Caravans moved through it on a predictable schedule, carrying spices, resins, and goods from Gilead toward the Egyptian markets, and carrying something else, something that moved along that same corridor just as predictably. People. Enslaved people. The slave trade between Canaan and Egypt in the 18th and 17th centuries before the Common Era was not an underground operation. It was commerce. Organized, documented, and conducted by professionals who knew the route, knew the buyers, and knew the going rate for every category of human merchandise. The Ishmaelites and Midianites mentioned in Genesis 37 were not random travelers. These were traders who operated along established routes with established contacts. The text uses both names, which has led to scholarly debate about whether they were separate groups or overlapping designations for the same caravan. In the ancient world, ethnic and commercial identities often blurred. What is not debated is what they were doing on that road. They were moving goods toward Egypt, and human beings were among those goods. Now consider the price. 20 pieces of silver. That is the number Judah names when he proposes selling Joseph. Most readings treat this as incidental, a number that happens to appear. It is not incidental. 20 pieces of silver was the documented market rate for a male slave of Joseph's age range in the ancient Near East, at approximately that historical period. We know this not from legend, but from surviving commercial records, from ancient Near Eastern legal codes, from the Nutsi tablets and comparable documentation that establish precise valuation tiers for enslaved people based on age and gender. A child under a certain age was worth less. An older adult was worth less. A young male of prime working age was worth more. 20 pieces of silver was not the top of the market, but it was the correct market price for a boy on the younger side of that demographic. Joseph was 17 years old. The brothers named the market price because they knew the market price. They had not stumbled into this number. They had priced a human being, or they knew what it cost to price one. In a world where caravans passed regularly through the land where they worked and lived, this information was not obscure. It was known the way any agricultural community knows the going rate for what they produce. They were herdsmen in a region that intersected with one of the primary trade routes between Canaan and Egypt. They knew what moved on that road. They knew what it cost. Now go back to the field. Jacob had sent Joseph from the valley of Hebron to find his brothers in Shechem. They had moved on to Dothan by the time Joseph arrived, a journey of roughly 90 miles total from his father's tent to where his brothers were grazing the flocks. He would have been visible from a distance. The terrain there opens into a wide, exposed plain. A man approaching alone on foot is identifiable long before he arrives. The brothers saw him coming before he could see their faces. The text says they conspired against him. The Hebrew word there is not the word for an argument or a dispute or even an act of violence. It carries the weight of deliberate plotting. They saw him coming across that plain and they made a plan. Their first instinct was death. Throw him in a pit, kill him, cover it with the explanation that a wild animal had taken him. Reuben, the eldest, intervened, not by defending Joseph openly, but by redirecting. "Don't shed blood," he said. "Throw him in the pit, but don't touch him." The text tells us privately that Reuben intended to come back later and pull Joseph out. Whether that makes him better or simply more conflicted is a question the text never fully resolves. They stripped Joseph of his coat, not simply the ornamental robe, though it was that. The coat was a public declaration from their father that Joseph occupied a different tier within the family structure. In a culture built on strict birth order and the primogeniture system, where the oldest son inherited authority and wealth and the progression of family destiny, Jacob had taken that position and handed it, symbolically and visibly, to a younger son. The coat was not a gift, it was a provocation. It was Jacob telling his older sons what he thought their rank was. Compared to this boy, taking it off Joseph before throwing him in the pit was not incidental. It was deliberate. They removed the thing that had marked him as elevated before they disposed of him. The pit was dry. That detail appears in the text and most readers move past it. They should not. In ancient Semitic culture, the pit, the Hebrew word is bor, carried a specific symbolic register. It was the language of the underworld, of death, of being cut off from the living. Cisterns and wells were life. A dry pit was its opposite, a place where water should be but isn't, a hollow in the earth that offered nothing. Psalm 88 uses the pit as an image of the grave. Lamentations uses it for abandonment by the divine. When the brothers threw Joseph into that dry pit, the cultural vocabulary of what they were doing was not neutral. They were placing him in the language of death, and then they sat down to eat. This is the detail that cannot be softened. Joseph is in the pit. Joseph is calling out to them. We know this because 22 years later, when everything has unraveled, the brothers say to one another, "We saw his distress when he pleaded with us, and we did not listen." They remembered the sound of him. They remembered his voice coming out of the ground while they ate their meal in the open air above him. And they ate anyway. The caravan appeared on schedule. This is the Dothan road. Caravans did not appear by accident on the Dothan road. This was their route. They came from Gilead, carrying spices and balm and myrrh, heading toward Egypt. The brothers saw them coming. Judah spoke. His proposal has been read two ways across centuries, and the text refuses to resolve the ambiguity. He said, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." Some read this as mercy, Judah pulling his brothers back from murder. The life of Joseph preserved because one man appealed to kinship. Others read it as something colder. Judah managing a problem efficiently, replacing a messy and unprovable death with a clean commercial exit that also returned 20 pieces of silver to the group. There is no way to know with certainty which it was. The text allows both. The brothers heard it as sufficient justification either way, and the transaction proceeded. Joseph was lifted from the pit. He was handed to strangers. 20 pieces of silver changed hands, counted out, received. The text uses a specific Hebrew verb for what happened in that exchange. Makar, sold. It is a legal term. It is the same word used in ancient Near Eastern commercial and legal documents for property transfer. Not abandoned, not given away, sold. With a price named, a price accepted, and a transaction completed between parties who understood the terms. There were witnesses. There was a road with a destination. There was a receiving economy on the other end that would process this young man through a system the brothers knew existed. They knew where that caravan was going, Egypt. They knew what Egypt's slave markets looked like. They knew because anyone working those Canaanite trade routes knew what happened to young male slaves once they entered the Egyptian system. The labor was brutal. The conditions were precise in their dehumanization. A 17-year-old boy stripped of identity, stripped of language, stripped of name in any practical sense, entered that system at the lowest possible tier. The brothers did not sell Joseph into vague uncertainty. They sold him into a specific and well-understood fate. Then they took the coat. They slaughtered a male goat and dipped the coat in its blood. They brought it to their father and they said, "We found this. Is it your son's robe or not?" Jacob recognized it immediately. He tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned for many days. He said he would go down to Sheol, to the grave, to his son in mourning. He refused to be comforted. His sons and daughters gathered around him, and the text says they rose up to comfort him. All of them, all 10 of them, standing around their father while he wept for a child they had sold that afternoon. Saying nothing, watching him grieve a death that had not happened, for a son who was somewhere on a road to Egypt, alive and terrified, while the men who put him there offered comfort. They held that silence for 22 years. Not one of them broke, not at the first year or the 5th or the 10th. Not when Jacob's grief showed no signs of ending, not when the coat was put away and the name became one that brought their father to his knees. 22 years of shared slints across 10 men. And that kind of silence is not the silence of guilt overtaking men who acted without thinking. That is the silence of men who made a decision they believed they could live with. The caravan moved south. The silver was divided or pocketed. The robe was buried or burned. And 10 men walked back toward their tents in the late afternoon light of Dothan, in a valley that sat on a road built for commerce, where the price of a young man was a number they had known before they were asked to name it. They knew exactly what they were doing, every step of the way, and they did it anyway.